The warehouse is open. Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 37. Collector profile, the great Jeff Thompson, a man who has given his life, probably a little too much for his family's love, but given his life to research, an amazing collection, and capsmuseum.com, as well as capsjerseys.com. Two fantastic resources, websites that have really evolved and helped to define what the modern and vintage Capitals collector should know. Jeff, welcome to the warehouse and ready to tell some tales. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you, Scott. Thanks for
Absolutely.
having me.
Oh, of course, it's our pleasure. I always say this when we do the collector profiles. I love doing this because I know stories, and you've been nice enough to share stories and knowledge and what have you. Those happen at the expos or whenever we're together, but there's always more to learn. And it's great that everybody who downloads this and listens and tunes in, they will gain an appreciation as well. By the way, before we get started, big congrats to the MeiGray authentication team. That Babe Ruth called shot jersey recently at auction went for upwards of $24 million, which is a record-setting total for a piece of sports memorabilia. Well done all around, and congrats to the new owner or owners. If it was a couple of people that went on, that's living history. That's been it's been, what's the proper term, preserved, and the all the work that went into the authentication. God bless and well done. Capitals, by the way, will head to camp before you know it, before we all know it. If you have not reached out to Dave at MeiGray to make your requests, always a good idea, and sometimes too late, but try to be ahead of the curve. If you have a favorite player that maybe changed teams and is now wearing the Washington Capital colors, DW Mizell at MeiGray.com, 50th anniversary season, loads of excitement. Again, new faces, a patch. It's going to be a really, really cool one around here. Jeff, as we said, welcome. Always like to start with a little bit of history. As far as how you got into this and what was the first game-worn sweater you ever picked up? Talk to me. Take me through the gateway that was Mr. Thompson's start in this illustrious hobby of ours.
Yeah, so this started around 1998 or so, when they made their cup run. They had been wearing the new style, Eagle style, for 3-4 years at that point. And I never really had an old style Caps jersey, like an authentic, because I know you remember the replicas were nothing close to the authentics. It was just a patch sewn on and the stars were screened on.
Yes.
Yeah, it was awful. But the authentic was different, every letter sewn on individually. Is really nice jersey. So I never had one of those, so I started looking. And what I could find was that game worn jerseys were about the same price as the authentics at that time. And I found Murph Denny's website and purchased a Lou Francischetti from the 1987 playoffs. And then, yeah, like you said, it went downhill from there.
I remember, and I'm sure you do too, so you got involved in 97, 98. A little bit earlier, I was at the Cap Center, and I noticed that the fan club, air quotes around that, lovely people, they had pins, they had game-worn sweaters. I remember buying a Kelly Miller at the time from the arena, and the good folks who were in the club, they collected for the love of collecting and for supporting a team. And we can talk about this now. We can talk about it later. The history of the Caps franchise, they were going to leave town at one point, and there was a Save the Caps campaign, and we can get back on the highway now. But the folks who were in that fan club, who were at those tables, at that table, at, I forget, whatever entrance it was, whether it was Stars and Stripes, whether it was, doesn't matter. Yep. But Jeff, I remember them all so vividly, super nice people. And they had, and again, perish the thought, because you and I look to appreciate the sweater as it was used on the ice and keep it that way. You and I are not necessarily autograph guys. Yeah. If you really want it, get it on the fight strap again, but to each his or her own. God bless. You do you. No, there's no wrong answer. That's just the opinion that you and I share. At any rate, these things, and whoever it was, a Dino, a Courtnall, Stevens, it doesn't matter. First of all, they would pin them and they would have their different pins and they would trade. It was almost like a miniature Olympic village
Yeah.
and loads of autographs on them. I don't know if you ever came in contact with those folks at the arena or of any recollection, but they were in it for the love of the player as opposed to the love of the hobby, which is a different avenue to take. And much respect to that, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when I was a kid. I remember, a friend of mine, his parents would take us to the games. So I remember seeing their booth and the game worn jerseys that were available. And of course, I'm like high school and I can't afford to buy them. But just seeing them and knowing, you know, those jerseys are so different than the one I'm wearing. That's the replica. You know, I just had that in the back of my mind. One day I'm going to own one of those. And well, one day now I own 150 of those, but yeah,
The
I definitely remember the fan club's booths.
Is the Franceschetti still in the collection, sir?
No, it was sold to Claudio Franceschetti, Lou's brother. He actually had a big Boston Bruins collection at one time,
Mm-hmm.
but he reached out to me and he wanted to buy it and have it for Lou's kids. So I made the deal.
Understood. Before we get very deep into the Caps and the Caps collection and all the Caps research, is there game worn gear from other sports along the way, or only the NHL?
It's only the NHL. Within hockey, I I go outside of the Capitals only when it's sort of Caps related. Um, I've got a few Swedish national team jerseys, Gustafsson, Backstrom, both Johanssons. And then I also have a collection of Bobby Carpenter's family.
Mm-hmm.
So he played with the Bruins. I've got a Bruins jersey. I've got his All-Star game jersey. And then I've got two of his kids. Alex Carpenter, obviously, is one of the greats of the PWHL. And then he has a son, Bobo Carpenter, who played at BU and has been in the ECHL the last couple of years. But
Gotcha. And
other than that, it's all Caps.
it's in there. So when you're looking to purchase a game worn Capital sweater, is there something exactly you look for, or need based, player based, or if it's red, white, and blue, or copper, or off blue, or black, or you know what I'm saying? As
Yeah.
long as there's a Capitals logo, consider you interested.
Um, there are definitely things I'm looking for. There's a few players I don't have that I want to acquire, but mostly I'm looking for things that relate to the history of the team. So some sort of connection to specific events or milestones or just something that's a part of the history of the team.
Is there a wear and tear attractiveness, or
Oh,
hey,
of course.
if this fills a need? And again, I know the answers, but and having been with you at so many different expos, your collection's amazing. We'll get into that in a second. But wear and tear, yes, you're a wear and tear person, but if it does fill a need and you're looking for player X of whom you have nothing in the Great Capitals Museum, capsmuseum.com, capsjerseys.com,
I
maybe you'll go, all right, a little less wear, but I've never seen this player before. I'm
Yeah,
still gonna go after it.
yeah, for sure. I will definitely purchase a jersey just because of the wear. Um, some of these that you come across from the early '80s just are just beat up so badly that you just have to buy it. I mean, it's art in itself. Um, but then, yeah, there's players that I need that I know are so few and far between out there that if one comes up and as long as I'm sure it's game worn, yeah,
Mhm.
if there's a stick mark or two, that's fine.
Just like every organization, there are incredibly amazing players, historic players, players that have provided length in uniform and time served in the organization. But there's also, I'll throw out a name. There's also like the Patrick Augustas of the world. Are you still? Might you still be interested in that because it was a blip and it was a moment in time and it didn't really pan out, but you were interested because it helps tell the story of the history of the organization through sweater.
Um, I mean, I can't buy everything, and I do have limits, so I I tend to stick with the guys that have been with the team longer. But yeah, I mean, if there's something unique about it, then I would definitely consider, even a guy that wasn't there very long or a jersey with very little wear. It just needs to stand out in some way, I guess.
It's Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 37, talking to Jeff Thompson. Great collector. This should be a fun collector profile. It already is. 50th anniversary season upcoming, by the way. So if you're looking to make a request, reach out to MeiGray, MeiGray.com. Dave Mizell will take your email. Again, patch, excitement, new players, Ovi's continued chase. This year's going to be a blast. DW Mizell at MeiGray.com. You've created Caps websites, capsmuseum.com, capsjerseys.com. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but you have a museum. You have been kind enough to share and set it up for us to look and admire and ask questions. And hey, can you take this off of the half mannequin and turn it inside out? I would love to see, and talk to me about the history of anything. An obvious answer is, of course, Scott, lots of things stand out, but any stories you'd like to share about the historic Caps moments, milestones that you have represented in sweater?
Um, I mean, I think just maybe take some of the bigger moments in the team history. The first anything of a franchise is always important. So one jersey that I was able to acquire was the jersey worn by Jim Rychuk in the first game ever in franchise history in Madison Square Garden. He scored the first goal in team history. Um, I I haven't been able to photo match that. How I have a pretty decent photo of the goal, but still, it's a black and white photo. It's kind of grainy, so there's not anything I can definitively photo match. But it the first season jerseys are somewhat distinct, so I know it's a first year. He was the only one to wear that number 25 that entire season. The wear is consistent with the number of games he played, so I'm pretty sure that's what it is. If you fast forward to 1998, the first year the Caps make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, they did so by beating the Buffalo Sabres in game 6 in overtime. Joey Juneau scores the game winner. I have that jersey that Joey was wearing. That one's photo matched to the handshake line of him shaking Dominic Hasek's hand. Then, of course, the 2018 playoffs and finals. Another one of the biggest goals in Capitals history. Kuznetsov beating the Penguins in overtime of Game 6 there. I have that jersey. Um, I had so I had MeiGray's website up as they were in overtime, knowing whoever scores this goal to beat the Penguins,
There's
I'm
your click.
clicking,
Right.
and that's exactly as soon as that goal went in, I found Kuznetsov, click, done. And then in the finals, I was lucky enough to acquire the Smith Pelly from Game 5 of the finals. And to me, that's the biggest goal in franchise history. Because I mean, even though the Caps had beat the Penguins, they had beat the Lightning, who were probably the best team in the league that season. They come in, they were pretty dominant in games 3 and 4, and were really leading that series. But you and I know the Caps have a history of not maintaining that momentum.
Not finishing the meal that they're expected to finish. You can say the C word, but it's, you win a cup, you lose that distinction. It's old. It's, it
Yeah,
angers people like you and I. You're like, whatever.
yeah, but in Game 5 at the end of the second period, they're down by a goal, and I mean anything can happen. Um, so on one hand, I'm looking at this as saying, okay, this could be the biggest collapse in history. but yet they were so dominant in games 3 and 4, and Vegas just looked beat. So, I mean, I'm thinking at that point, next goal if the Caps score the next goal, they're winning the series no matter what. So to me, when Smith Pelly scored, that was the end of the series. And then sure enough, Eller puts the final stamp on it and scores the actual game winner. But I mean, and Smith Pelly's goal was just so beautiful. Stop the puck with the skate, kick it up to the stick, get tripped, and then still
Finish in a
put it
prone
back.
position.
Yeah.
It's a great photo moment. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody wants to talk about Holtby and the save, and you should always talk about Holtby and the save. But there was, and it was amazing. No, I'm not here to compare the two, but I will say that the comps are pretty darn cool because one stopped a goal in the finals, but also that one an amazing feat of flexibility that added a very important tally at the time. And photo moment, just totally, you're like, and from an unsung hero too, a guy who, is no longer in the league. It's not, sure, it would have been great if it was an Ovechkin or someone else that notched that lamplighter. However, the fact that it's DSP, Jeff, I think adds to the lore of it.
It does. I mean, he wasn't just that game or that goal. I mean, he had what 7 or 8 goals in that playoffs and was just huge, game in and game out. So it was really nice to see him get that one.
So we mentioned different eras, obviously a championship season, and go back a little bit. How about from, when they were achieving but not achieving to great heights, the early to mid 80s or much of the 80s when David Poyle was in town? There are sweaters in your collection from that time and that provide, I'm sure, memories and stories. And you can tell me chapter and verse about the elusive patches of that time. The Caps Entertainment, That's Entertainment was the 10th Cap Center patch.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is story worthy. They're hard to come by.
Yeah, so that era, from I guess 1982 to 87, 88-ish, that's kind of when I first really got into the Caps and started following them as a kid. So that era definitely stands out. It's one of my favorites. But that 83, 84 team was, one of the first it was the first Capitals team to really become a contender for the Stanley Cup. And that year they wore a 10th anniversary patch. It was commemorating the 10th anniversary of the Capitol Center, not the team, but it just happened to coincide with the team's 10th year as well. But it was only worn on the regular season home whites. So there's one set of jerseys out there, maybe 25 to 30 jerseys. And every expo and every year we get together, we go through, okay, which ones have we seen? And and I think there's maybe 10 or 11 that we've seen in the hobby. So those are always sought after and hard to find. I have 2 with that patch. One is Gaetan Duchesne, and the other is Doug Jarvis, who won the Selke Trophy that season. So the Jarvis kind of fits in with my team history theme.
2 amazing pieces in an amazing collection. Talking to Jeff Thompson, Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 37. It's a collector's profile as we focus on Jeff and his amazing Washington Capitals collection. Available to see, capsmuseum.com, capsjerseys.com, and at a lot of expos. Jeff has been kind enough to make himself and make his fantastic collection available. You have an appreciation and a fan attachment and have done a lot of research. As far as an opinion goes for the Mount Rushmore of Capitals greats, I have a sneaking suspicion who's number 1. But after that, and again, you ask my son, who's a junior in college, who's on the Caps Mount Rushmore, he probably would say, and he's a smart kid, but he's also a smart ass, he would probably say, that's 4, right? And I would go, yes, it's 4. Give me 4 names. His perception is different than Um, my brother-in-law's perception is different than a season ticket holder from the 74, 75, where they say, oh, you can look at the retired numbers. That may not be the right answer, but maybe Langway's in, maybe Holtby's in, maybe Holtby's out. Ovi's going to be there. Bondra is going to be there, I think. But then the other two, it's going to get really, really difficult. There are people who want to make a case, Jeff. John Carlson should be there because of longevity, and I'm not that guy, but it's a fun topic, especially considering it's a team that has only won one cup, but has had some pretty impressive players along the way. Who's on your Caps Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, Ovi for sure. I would say Langway is a shoe-in. I think you've got to include him.
Agree.
And then Bondra, absolutely. For the fourth one, I think you have to go with the goalie. Two forwards, a defenseman, and a goalie is pretty even. I would put Kolzig in there. He put the team on his back in '98. That playoffs, Bondra played well, Juneau and Oates played well, but he just stood out. I mean, he was just unbelievable, game in, game out. Every game was 2-1 in overtime. I mean, to just his performance in that alone was huge. But then 2 years later, he wins the Vezina Trophy.
Right.
And I mean that team was kind of built around defense, but he was really the pillar that maintained throughout those years.
It's an interesting poker hand because Ole's got a Vezina and a Cup final and some insane stats and wins and what have you. And then you're like, but what about Holtby? He won a Vezina and a Cup. And I know that some of the modern folk would then say, Mr. Thompson, come on now. This guy got, I mean, I'm not here. It's a fun argument over a soda or a beverage.
Yeah. And it's funny, if I was looking the other day at the all-time playoff save percentage leaders, Kolzig is 5 all time. He's number 5. That's how good he was. But Holtby's number 7. So yeah, if you want to go with Holtby, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
For those of you who have been to Capital One Arena to see a Caps game, you will see behind glass collections and milestones and different aspects of equipment and sweater history. And Jeff has established a relationship through capsmuseum.com and capsjerseys.com where he's the guy who they call more often than from time to time because of his standing in the hobby and his connections and his collection. Can you tell us a little bit of how you work to work along and collaborate and curate with the Caps as to what's displayed and what have you?
So they've reached out to me on a couple occasions. The one that's on display now that's in my collection is the Mike Marson. That's in there. There's a display of jerseys and sticks and helmets from the Black Capitals players throughout their history. So they reached out to me asking what their marketing team reached out asking what I had, and I sent them a list, and they decided they just wanted the Marson jersey. Now they wanted to either purchase or borrow it. I didn't really want to give it up. So we worked out a deal, and we just connect every year, every 18 months or so, just to kind of make sure that I'm okay with them still having it. I let them know, yep, you can have it throughout the season, because they need to have some warning when they want to switch it up and put something else in there.
As far as them heading into the 50th season, do you have your own must list, if you will, as far as moments or players or things that they need to focus on heading into the 50th? And again, it's been a wild ride. I mean, this team paraded around with a Stanley can in their first season, and they were 8-67-5 or something. I forget. Whatever. Go look it up. Not you, but listener, by all means, please. Yep. They were an 8-win team in their first year. And, you know, the great Ivan LeBray, who's as affable and as lovely as they come, will tell stories about how they won a game at the Seals and they picked up a can and they paraded the can around the locker room and they called it the Stanley Can at the time. And
Yeah.
I don't know if Ivan's sweater's available from that night or there's anything else, but that again, you're like that's a moment straight out of Slapshot. No disrespect intended, but that's what makes this a great game. That'd be you're like, wait a second, why are we focusing on a road win during an 8-win season when they went around the locker room and did but
Yeah.
there are so many moments and obviously Ovi will star in so many of them from the goal to cup raising to DSP's gold goal in the finals to as you pointed out and it's in your very own collection Kuznetsov, Holtby the save, Bondra, a 5-goal night. I mean, there's just loads, and there's tons of Langways, and our friend Derek Whitwer, who has an amazing collection of Capital/Langway. I mean, there's so many moments, Jeff, that are available. I would think that they're going to run out of glass space before before the list is fit. You're like, can we get some more cases to show off moments because there's a lot of there.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a lot that they could focus on and could display. And I think you have to show the bad with the good. You have to show the 8-win season. You have to show the 82-83 save the Caps campaign. And then the Langway trade, and you draft Scott Stevens, and it kind of turns things around. But just showing the 2018 finals doesn't really give you the history or the appreciation of what that finals meant, because there was year after year of playoff disappointment that really made that 2018 team so much more special. So I think if they could have a display of one jersey from every year with some sort of story of that year, I think that would be great.
I couldn't agree more, and I can't wait to see what they come up with, and hopefully it involves a lot of help with you. By the way, as we head into this 50th season, if you're interested, DW Mizell at MeiGray.com. Get on the request list. If there's a favorite player, maybe it's somebody who just came over, maybe it's maybe it's a new netminder, maybe it's a new forward, maybe it's a legend who's still playing, and you're like, I need to add that before said legend goes away. DW Mizell at MeiGray.com. Contact Dave. MeiGray, the proud home of the Washington Capitals game-worn sweaters. Tell me about capsjerseys.com. Labor of love, labor of hobby, necessity, combination of both. How long has this taken? And it's never really done either, Jeff. You're like, there's more to do. There's more to learn. There's more to share.
Yeah, I actually haven't updated it in probably 3 or 4 years. There's always a lot more to do. But for me, it wasn't really about being up to date, because now with the MeiGray's population report, the details are all there. I don't need to kind of fill in. There's nothing to fill in really for me. It started back in the days of the GameWorn.net forum. There was a page on that website with each team and kind of a rough guess at what they wore each year. And there was a lot missing from the Capitals. There was some information on there that just wasn't correct. So I wanted to just kind of, from my own knowledge, just figure out what did they wear every year. And creating a website was an easy way to put pictures in, have all the information, just collect it all in one place. So yeah, so I just put it up there to share it with other people. And like I said, I haven't really updated it in the past few years, but I've kind of switched over to capsmuseum.com, and
Museum.com.
I'm having a lot more fun with that.
I was going to say, is there a difference, a big difference? Can you explain the difference? Or it's just, you know what? Capsjerseys.com is still there. Please feel free to use it as a research tool. And there's a boatload of information as far as the history of the sweaters. Capsmuseum.com has just sort of become, hey, this is what I'm playing with these days. Enjoy and have fun, because that's ultimately what the hobby's about anyway.
Yeah, capsjerseys.com was just a way of documenting what they wore each year, so that, if you get a sweater and you're not sure what year it is, because from like 87, 88 to 89, 90, they're pretty much all the same. There's little things, the tagging changed slightly. There's, other little details that can kind of guide you as to where it fits. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of put all that stuff together and have it in a place that collectors could use, and that I could easily go back and look, because I can't remember everything all the time, so it's good to have. But Caps history, I just wanted, I mean, if you look at teams like the Bruins and the Canadians and the Rangers, there's a million books out there on their history and photos and just wonderful stuff. The Capitals, there's not really that much out there. There's a couple books you can find on Amazon, but otherwise, there's I just wanted to put something together that kind of showed the history of the team, and people could use as a kind of a learning point to kind of get into the team and understand where we are today with Capitals.
It's much appreciated. Trust me. Talking to Jeff Thompson, Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 37, Collector's Profile on Jeff and the Caps. 50 seasons, not a lot of changes through the first X number of years, 22, 23 seasons, give or take, little tweak here and there, but not much. Then we got into the Screaming Eagle and the Capitol Dome and the black, and then they had a little bit more fun a couple years later. 50 seasons, not 50 distinct styles. You got a favorite or favorites from maybe some of the outdoor, or give you classic all day long?
Both. So for me, the original home white is the best one. But I actually like the blue one that they've been wearing the last few years. I know it's gone now, but I think that's a beautiful jersey just in itself. So that's probably my second favorite, is the blue one.
The roster for the season upcoming does feature for a team that we were led to believe was cash strapped and wouldn't be able to do much of anything. They sure as heck did a very interesting and fun roster turnover, a la fantasy. You got a new netminder. You got new faces on the defensive front. You got forwards. There will be shoes to drop as we get closer to the season, because they're going to have to probably get things rock solid as far as the math goes. But it's been a fun off season if you're a Caps fan. As far as game worn collectors weaving into that conversation, is there a face? Are there faces that collectors, Jeff, in your opinion, would be more excited about, or should be most excited about with the coming season? The acquisition of blank. I want to see what this person looks like in a Cap sweater and what this person does to a Cap sweater.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think just in terms of the team, Pierre-Luc Dubois is really the key, because he could go either way. And I think the Capitals' biggest weakness from last year was just their forward core generating offense. I mean, you've got Ovechkin and Oshie and Wilson and Milano. They're all great finishers, but with Kuznetsov gone, it was really Strome and McMichael that were the creators of the offense. And to now add Dubois into that mix, I think he really boosts that forward core. And then, of course, on defense, adding Chychrun and Roy is huge. So, yeah, I mean, whichever way you want to go, it's definitely exciting.
As far as hoping to add a piece from the 50th anniversary season, and again, get your requests in, contact Dave Meisel at MeiGray.com, DW Meisel at MeiGray.com. Is there something on Mr. Thompson's want list headed into the season, or You're going to wait to see how things develop before you press click like you did during the Kuznetsov series.
Um, I, I think just getting one of each, the white and the red with the patch. Player wise, I don't think there's any specific player that I'm really looking to add. Last year I picked up a Strome and a McMichael. Yeah, I mean maybe a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see, because Lindgren played incredible most of the time last season. So if he can continue this year, I think I'd like to add a Lindgren. But again, now that they've got a really good backup, uh, any little falter, and then it could be Logan Thompson's team.
Right. And again, I don't mean to equate because that's unfair to Richter and Van Beesbrook, but we've hockey fans have long appreciated the 1A and 1B. In the playoffs, you want somebody to be the established, but over the course of a season, it's a long season. You don't want your guy to get tired. You don't want your guy to get too many minutes. However, you've seen players, Hall of Fame level players like Perrant, but you've also seen Ole, who we mentioned earlier, Braden Holtby. They both had seasons in which they accumulated tons of action. So there's different ways to make that argument, support that argument, and or poke holes in that argument. But obviously, from the Caps' perspective, you wish Thompson the best, you wish Lindgren the best, and if you collect them, you hope that there's a lot of puck marks because goalie wear is really, really cool.
It
Jeff,
is. It is.
you've been doing this for a while. You've been doing this since the 90s when you got into it. Uh, Over the years, trends, I hate that I answer this question for you, so I'll make it quick. Trends are cyclical. You'll be like, oh, yeah, I noticed this, and then it goes away, and then it comes back. What have you noticed through the decades that has stuck, even if it disappeared, came back again?
The wear,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. The 70s, the wear was decent. And then I think when just the materials changed on the jerseys, and the 80s, depending on the jersey style, there was either a lot of wear or, a good amount. And then as through the 90s and 2000s, it kind of got less and less and less and less and less. But now, the jerseys are not the same quality as those old 80s mesh jerseys, which were like iron. These things, a guy wears it 10 games and it's got 30 repairs.
Right.
It's just incredible the wear they're putting on them now.
And you and I are lucky, and you can certainly speak more to this. We collect a team that tends to show a ton of wear, no matter how many games this thing is utilized. I mean, I've seen Pacioretty's with 10 on each sleeve, and he wore it for X. Carlson can go through periods of sets where there's not much, but then you'll stumble upon and you'll say, this is John Carlson, right? Where all of a sudden you'll see 15 on each sleeve. And, I mean, I've made a joke over the past couple. We're going to miss Nick Jensen around here because
Yes.
he was notorious for this. But it's not always the case with other teams for whatever reason. But the Caps have, I tire of the bring back the wear. Have you seen what the Caps are putting out there? Like, don't stop saying that as a generalization. It's not fair to what Brock Miles and the Caps equipment staff have going on because the boys are doing a number on their sweaters, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whoever's got the sewing machine and is making those repairs will definitely argue with with the collectors who say there's no wear out there today. Yeah, I mean, I've got a Nick Jensen with almost 40 repairs on it, and that's 15 games. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
can you imagine that over a full season? That would be crazy.
It looked like it was, perhaps had spent time in a cheese grater or something like that. Last one for you today. Pull out Mr. Thompson's crystal ball. Is there something you see for the future of the game worn hockey jersey hobby? And this is non binding, of course.
For the future, more styles. I think the last few seasons we've seen the reverse retros, and then of course you have the Stadium Series, the Winter Classic. They're they're trying to work in as many, cash opportunities as they can. And you look at baseball and basketball, every game somebody's wearing a new style.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see that continuing. More creativity on the jersey designers to come up with something that's never been done. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't know. It seems to be pretty slow to evolve. I mean, I I can remember, just like it was yesterday, where people were complaining that teams were going from 2 sets per year to now 3 sets per year, and it's been 20 some years since that, and they're still wearing 3 sets per year, but they're working in the Winter Classics and the Stadium Series and the Reverse Retro. So I can see them kind of slowly expanding.
Jeff, I speak for all collectors. A massive thank you for sharing the knowledge. Thanks for sharing the conversation today. Thank you for sharing capsjerseys.com, which you can still go to and check out. And by extension, capsmuseum.com, which is amazingness on display. I'll leave it at that. And if you have a chance to meet Jeff at an expo, definitely say hi. And his collection is like none other, documenting the history of a franchise that turns 50 this year. Again, if you want to get on the request list, contact Dave at MeiGray at DWMeizel or DWMeizel at MeiGray.com. And also a final congrats to the MeiGray authentication team. That Babe Ruth jersey, gorgeous, historical, jaw-dropping. Way to go on the authentication. And as it set a record for sports memorabilia, sold at auction for upwards of $24 million. Well done all the way around. Mr. Thompson, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We will see you at an upcoming expo. Again, check out Jeff's stuff. Capsmuseum.com, capsjerseys.com. For Jeff, I'm Scott. This has been Tales from the Warehouse, Volume 37, a chat with Jeff Thompson, another one of our collector profiles. Until next time, the warehouse is closed.